Am I with the LGB Alliance? No. And it's because it's extremely... That's the problem I have with the detrans situation too, is when a person identifies as transgender, they get all this love and support and everybody's on their side. And then if they detransition, the modern feminist movement is generally considered to have started in 1848 with the Seneca Falls Convention in New York. So they had transgender people in mind back in 1848? Is that what you're telling me? Because I don't think in Lesbian Visibility Week, you're telling lesbians how to be lesbians. What's up, everybody? Thai Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. Okay, this article is absolutely burning up social media right now. I decided to check it out. A lot of people are talking about it, and it's from the Wall Street Journal, so they wanted to charge me money, and then I had to buy a subscription, and it ended up costing me like $4 just to read this article. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make my money back by actually reading this online and reacting to it. That's how petty I am. I refuse to pay $4 for one article. And it's not $4 for this one article. It's you had to buy a subscription and it has to be at least 4 weeks. And they've got a special where it's $1 a week for 4 weeks. And then after that, it would be like $39. But we're not making it to after that. I'm going to cancel this immediately after. I don't care if they end up keeping my whole $4 for the next 4 weeks. Maybe I'll read a couple things from the Wall Street Journal. I doubt it. If I know me, I doubt it. But, okay, so here we go. The name of the article is The Growing Divide in the Rainbow Coalition, which the title alone bothers me and tells me that it's probably somebody that's kind of on the young side that wrote this, because the Rainbow Coalition was like a group of like Black Panthers and I can't remember the other groups, but it was all like a pro-Black type movement. So to rebrand the Rainbow Coalition to now mean gay, I get what you're getting at because we're the rainbow community, but I don't think that it should be called the Rainbow Coalition because the Rainbow Coalition actually means something. Jesse Jackson used to talk about the Rainbow Coalition. So anyway, the growing divide in the Rainbow Coalition. More gay people are speaking out against the gender ideology of trans and queer activists. Okay, I would fall in that category, so let's continue reading. As a very, very effeminate boy growing up in Baltimore, Ben Appel was teased mercilessly. At school, where he was regularly bullied, the other kids called him Ben Gay. Okay. I mean, children are just very entertaining. I have to say, if there's anybody that you don't want to be bullied by, it's children. It was awful, Appel, now 42 and married to another man, recalled. So they were right. You were Ben Gay. I realized I wasn't going to survive, so I made it my full-time job to defeminize myself as a form of self-protection. In his 20s, Appel lobbied for gay marriage, and in 2017, he interned at GLAAD, an LGBTQ advocacy group determined to fight on behalf of kids like him. Okay, me and Ben have that in common, because when I was young, because I was raised with my sisters and I didn't have any boys around me, I definitely was on the effeminate side, and then I taught myself to not be as feminine, and now I've reached a point where I don't care. But like when I was younger, being straight or wanting to project as straight in the years that you care about that, like junior high, and then in high school I dropped out and then kind of shot out of the closet shortly after that, and boy did I shoot out of the closet. But yeah, so I can relate to that part of the story. I'm gonna have fun, but But when Appel later enrolled at Columbia University, eager to learn about the theories behind his activism, the rhetoric he encountered felt more like dogma than inquiry. According to queer theory, if you're a man who believes in unmasculine ways or wears eyeliner, you must be a woman inside, which I thought was regressive, Appel, who graduated in 2020, recalled, saying that those superficial attributes are what makes women women, and that any variation on the rough He-Man stereotype means you're not a man, reinforces these rigid sex roles, and I thought we were supposed to be against those. In his book, Cis White Gay, The Making of a Gender Heretic, which comes out next week, Appel argues that gender ideology is illiberal, regressive, and anti-gay, as much a cult as Lambs of God, the fundamentalist sect in which Appel was raised, and one that he and an increasingly vocal group of gay men, lesbians, and bisexual people reject. The call is getting louder, and it's coming from inside the house. More than 36 in-depth interviews with gay men, lesbian women, bisexuals, and transgender people, along with surveys and several new books, including The End of the Gay Rights Revolution by Ronan McCrea, also coming out next month, reveal a complicated and contentious relationship between the LGB and the TQ plus components of what advocacy organizations and the Democratic Party refer to as LGBTQ plus people. While gay and lesbian people emphasize that they oppose discrimination and harassment of transgender adults, they resent being force-teamed, taken over, or erased by trans and queer ideologues, especially when gay people constitute 90% of those Gallup categorizes as LGBTQ+. In private chat groups and burgeoning LGB organizations and on podcasts, many question whether same-sex attracted people should have allied themselves with trans and queer identities in the first place. To most LGBTQ+ groups, this attitude is nothing short of trans exclusion and antithetical to their principles. And they're just going to have to learn to live with that, because we are 90% of what is the LGBTQ community, and we are tired of the T and the Q and the plus, whatever that plus may be, whatever the newest is that they're trying to toss at us and force team us with. And that way I will agree that there is force teaming. And I definitely do have feelings about trans. I'm still making that video. There's one that I'm making that's really, really gonna be an important one that I want you guys to be on the lookout for. I'm gonna be putting that out in the next couple of days. But I have so much stuff on my plate right now and so much I want to talk about, because I think stuff like this is important, not only to gays, lesbians, bisexuals, and the TQ and the plus in their own way, because they're going to be left out in the cold, but also to straight people too, because I think a lot of what straight people are looking for from us, especially women, when it comes to gender ideology and trans people in women's spaces, I think what you're looking for from the gay community will be really contingent about the way this all plays out. And that's why I'm coming on real strong. If you follow me on X, you know I'm coming on real strong about the fact that gay is separate from the rest of that. Am I with the LGB Alliance? No. And it's because it's extremely unappealing, and I don't feel like the people that run the LGB Alliance, which if you're not familiar, they're a group from the UK that have started to try to like take over that space of being there. It's not going to happen because they don't know actual gay history. Like, it's lesbians that don't really have a lot of personality, which there are lesbians that have plenty of personality. There are lesbians that really do get what gay has always been about. But these particular lesbians don't get it. Like, they think it's a very conservative thing. And while there are conservative elements to the gay community, and there are like conservative people, like I would be considered a gay conservative. But if you know my life and you pay attention to the way that I speak, I'm clearly heavily influenced by gay culture. Like, I have been a part of gay culture for a lot of my adult life. There were years when I wasn't able to really pay attention to that part of myself because I was so focused on stand-up and just being good at that and being on the road. And outside of the occasional hookup or the guys that I would date occasionally, I wasn't really able to actively be in the gay community. But that doesn't mean that I don't very much come from gay culture. And I can tell by a lot of the things that these women say, because it's mostly a group of women. Like I said, it's some lesbians, and then there's a few gay men sprinkled in there that I would never hang out with. But there's one or two that I would chat with, but they're just a very unappealing group. And I don't see the gays really migrating towards that. Because another thing with the LGB Alliance is they're stuck on this, all trans people are bad. When it comes to transsexuals are great. They usually don't want to invade anybody's spaces. And I know some people have a real problem with that because they think I'm supposed to completely turn on trans people because they have trans in their title, and I'm not supposed to say transsexual woman or trans woman or any of that. That's your choice if you feel like I shouldn't. I don't know what to tell those people, honestly, because I'm going to continue to be the person that I've been my entire adult life, not changing for you guys. Yes, I can have your backs, and yes, I can agree that there do need to be certain boundaries, But that doesn't mean that I'm going to completely, and that's a problem with the LGB Alliance, is they want to be like, all trans people are mutilated men and they need to start dressing like men and accept that they're men. And it's not going to work because too many of us, even the conservative gays, know transsexual people that are cool. Like, you're going to tell me that I can't be cool with Blair White anymore. You're going to tell me that I can't be cool with Buck Angel anymore. You're going to tell me I can't be cool with Sarah Higdon. I can't be cool with Jessica Gill. I can't be cool with Tori. I don't remember her last name, but she's absolutely beautiful and a wonderful trans woman. I'm not supposed to be friends with any of these people anymore, or treat them the way that they want to be treated, or refer to them in the pronouns that I'm comfortable referring to them in, and nobody's forcing me to, including them. Good luck making that happen. Even the most conservative gays, well, if you consider Mr. Menno a conservative gay, I consider Mr. Menno to be an utter waste of time. And I know there will be people in my comments like, well, at least Mr. Menno always has our backs as women. Mr. Menno kisses your asses because he wants to be one of you. That's the difference between me and Mr. Menno. And I'll make a full video about Mr. Menno too, if it makes you happy, because I don't think a lot of people get it. But I am something different. I am a gay man who's friends with a lot of women, who has women's back. I am not Mr. Menno, who wants to be a woman, so will do absolutely anything to make sure you're happy. That's not my job. My job, yes, is to have your back, but anybody I've ever had the back of, I always do test them in the way that they'll throw out an idea and I'll try to help them firm up that thinking by questioning them about certain things or reminding them about certain things. And I think that's the job of a good friend. I do it with my regular friends in real life all the time. Firm up that thinking by questioning them about certain things or reminding them about certain things. And I think that's the job of a good friend. I do it with my regular friends in real life all the time. Let's get on with this article. I'm editorializing too much. These disagreements stem from radically different ways of viewing identity. Gay people typically see their homosexuality as fundamentally grounded in biology and based on attraction to people of the same sex. Transgender people instead prioritize gender identity, defined by the Human Rights Campaign, an LGBTQ+ advocacy group, as one's innermost concept of self as male, female, a blend of both, or neither. You see why we're trying to separate from this? Meanwhile, queer theory argues that both sex and gender exist on a spectrum and are often fluid, allowing for labels like non-binary and genderqueer. And all of that can happen in your head. That's what I always say about that. It happens in a lot of our heads. There are certain days where I feel more in touch with the feminine in me. There are certain days when I feel more in touch with the masculine in me. And I think that everybody experiences that to a separate degree. It doesn't make you part of a different community. It doesn't make you a different thing. And I think if you're all being honest with yourselves, you know what it feels like to be non-binary, because some days you feel exactly like I said, some days more masculine. It doesn't matter if you're man, woman, straight, gay, whatever you are, there will be moments where you feel more dominant one way or the other. And it may vary in different degrees. Like, you may not be a full-on sissy Mary like me when I'm feeling feminine, but you might put a little more swish in your man, I feel like a woman. Bum, bum, banana, bum, bum. And that's for the straight men, because I've seen a few straight men get down to that song, and I can tell you're feeling like a woman right now. Doesn't mean you're gay. Doesn't mean you're anything on the fruity scale. Just means you felt a little like a woman at that moment. She came out. There have always been default lines within the Rainbow Coalition. It's not the Rainbow Coalition. Stop saying it like that. That's not what the Rainbow Coalition is. The term Rainbow Coalition most commonly refers to the 1969 alliance of the Chicago Black Panther Party, the Young Lords, and the Young Patriots, formed to combat issues like police brutality and poverty. That's what the Rainbow Coalition was. So stop referring to it as the Rainbow Coalition. That's not the Rainbow Coalition, and I can't stand that. It's so annoying. There have always been fault lines within the Rainbow Coalition, but in the past 10 years, ever since the right to gay marriage was secured in 2015, Further divisions have emerged and expanded along with growing rancor and vitriol, all of which belies the overriding image of inclusion touted by advocacy groups. For those of us who work in the field as advocacy-focused political activists, these are hard conversations we have to have as a movement, said Thai Rivera, communications director for the National LGBTQ Task Force, which was founded in 1973 as the National Gay Task Force. That's why I always tell you guys, there's no queer history, there's gay history. It's another thing I'm tired of is always hearing, well, queer history has always been, gay history is what it is. And it recently got changed to LGBTQ history, and then it became queer history. So how about we just change it all the way back to gay history, and everybody can either fall under that umbrella or find yourself somewhere else. 90%. We're 90% of LGBTQ. To me, this is often about fear of the other, and nobody understands that better than queer people. Okay, well, what about gay people? Because I'm not really worried about queer people. As for gay people who don't believe in gender identity, Rena says, it's fine not to believe in it, but why do you have to impose what you believe on everyone else? Good question, Kathy. That is a great question. And that's what not only the gays and lesbians and bisexuals are asking, but it's also what society in general is asking about the queer community. Why do you have to impose what you believe on everyone else? I'm talking to you in the ladies' bathroom right now, by the way. Blow-ups regularly erupt over these conflicts. In August, for example, John Boyne, author of the best-selling The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, was boycotted by more than 800 writers when his new novel, which addressed homophobia and sexual assault, was shortlisted for the Polari Prize, a literary award for gay British authors. Boyne had publicly stated that he supports transgender rights, except when they come into conflict with women's rights, for example, in prisons and domestic violence shelters. His fellow nominees removed themselves from contention in protest. The prize was canceled, and Polari vowed to increase the representation of trans and gender non-conforming judges on the panels. Well, it sounds to me like that's you forcing everybody to believe in what you believe in, trans community, queer community. Once again, Kathy, I refer back to you. It sounds like because this particular author thought differently than you did, there was a punishment for it. I wonder why that would be, Kathy. None of this makes sense. For LGBTQ advocates, solidarity has been the dominant strategy, one that often requires tamping down on conflicts, especially in the face of what most consider hostile rhetoric and policies from the Trump administration. In the aftermath of Trump's re-election, with its powerful Kamala Harris's For They Them ad campaign, when the Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton voiced reservations about trans-identified girls playing on girls' sports teams, he was excoriated for LGBTQ plus groups for harmful speech, and one of his top staff members quit. And again, this is not helping the LGBTQ community because there are a lot of gays and lesbians that have nephews and nieces, or they themselves are in sports and they want them to be separated by sex because there is a reason. The biology is different. I don't know why anybody can't get that. I don't know how that's such a thing. I don't know why this is the hill that the LGBTQ community and the activists want to die on, even losing support from their own people. But you want to push it that hard. Maybe it's because that's where you're making your money. Everyone is hell-bent on sticking together because they think there's strength and validation in numbers, but that's not true, says Ariel Scarcella. Oh, shout out Ariel! I love Ariel Scarcella. She has a YouTube channel. I'm sure you're all familiar. If you're not, check it out. I love Ariel Scarcella. That's an actual lesbian right there. A 39-year-old Brooklyn-based YouTuber who frequently posts videos critiquing gender theory and trans activism to her 800,000 followers. Quote, I think there's safety in sanity because people can understand things that make sense. And none of this makes sense. You now have straight people calling themselves queer because they have purple hair and are non-monogamous. She could not be more right, and it's something we're all tired of, because not only do straight people do those things and then call themselves queer, but then they're trying to shout us down as gays and lesbians and be like, this is what the community's about. And it's like, you're not part of the community. What do you mean this is what the community's about? How can you tell me what something's about that you're not a part of and you'll never be a part of? I don't care that you color your hair, and are in a non-monogamous polyamorous relationship. That still doesn't make you part of my community. I told you guys before, I'm for the gays, the lesbians, bisexuals are included in that because you're teetering the line. I know you're your own thing, but sometimes when I say just the gays and the lesbians, that's what I mean. Transsexuals too. A lot of times at the base of ya, if you're transsexual, you're probably a lesbian or a gay man. You just dress differently. So you're still covered by gay and lesbian. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments. By the way, like, comment, and subscribe. This is probably the most toxic reading of an article you can do. And then I'm like, comment, and subscribe. We're on our way to 100,000 subscribers. When you hit the subscribe button, click the bell, select all notifications so that you know every time I upload. To Jose Arango, immigrating to America at 17 after growing up in conservative, religious, homophobic Colombia felt like a liberation. I threw myself into everything gay. Pause. And I bet everything gay threw itself into you, Jose. Anyway, I threw myself into everything gay, said Arango, now 27. He became president of the Pride Club at Miami-Dade Community College's Wolfson campus. He was awarded an LGBT scholarship from the Point Foundation. For the first time, he felt not only loved but celebrated. He had found his community. Though confused by people using what seemed to him eccentric pronouns, he figured, I'm in this new country where things are more advanced. I didn't really question it. But the more he read about queer theory, the more Arango rejected the concept of gender identity. It was all based on stereotypes, he said. The anathema to gay kids like himself who were teased for not being manly enough. When Arango began expressing these views in 2022, his boyfriend dumped him and denounced him as a transphobe. He lost most of his friends. What he had originally understood as a welcoming LGBTQ plus community now felt exclusionary and hostile. That's what they do. That's the problem I have with the detrans situation too, is when a person identifies as transgender, they get all this love and support and everybody's on their side. And then if they detransition, those same people all hate them and tell them they're transphobic. And it's like, well, why wouldn't you just continue to stay friends with them? Because most detransitioners that I've come across have not been saying that nobody should ever transition. They're just saying that people under a certain age should not start any kind of permanent changes because there's a chance they could be like them and end up realizing as they develop that that wasn't the right choice for them. So don't do anything irreversible. But they're considered hateful and transphobic no matter how they go at it. So I don't buy into this. The LGBTQ community is so loving. I'm sorry you had to find out that way, Jose. I'm sure it hurt. There's a don't be ungrateful tone, especially aimed at gays who never knew a gay world before gender ideology took over, Arango explained. Well, that's where I'm very fortunate. I came out long before this was even a thing. My view is that it's they who have betrayed us, insisting there are lesbians with penises and gay men with vaginas, and that any straight person calling themselves non-binary somehow belongs. Well, you tell them, Jose. You sure have caught on fast to being an American. Many gays and lesbians say gender identity strips same-sex attraction of its meaning. Transgender and queer activists have disappeared the idea of sex, and that means getting rid of the idea of sexual orientation and the whole basis of being gay, says Anne Manesh, 72, a civil rights lawyer and lifelong gay rights activist based in San Diego. I'm on the far left, but this really is not progressive. Well, guess what, Anne? Things change. You're now on the right. Welcome. If you need a MAGA hat, hit me up. I have a good friend in San Diego. I'll have him run it to you personally. In 2022, Monash was fired from her job at Disability Rights California after objecting to the omission of the word women in a statement her employer put out in favor of abortion rights and speaking out about sex-based rights. I was called a bigot and a transphobe and such a danger to the staff that I was refused unemployment, she said. She filed a lawsuit and the matter was litigated and resolved out of court. Disability Rights California did not respond to requests for comments. Kathy, from the earlier part of the story? I thought nobody was trying to force anybody to think any particular way. It seems kind of like that might be opposite of what's happening in this article, Kathy. Monash was one of several interviewees who lost jobs for expressing similar views. What we're seeing is a witch hunt against lesbians, she said. For their part, trans advocates argue that trans women can also be lesbians and that it's lesbians who are being exclusionary. Efforts to exclude trans women and non-binary people from lesbian and feminist communities are ahistorical, morally wrong, and go against founding values of those movements. The National Center for LGBTQ plus rights wrote in a statement issued during Lesbian Visibility Week. Really? Because I don't think back when feminism started that there were trans women in the movement. Let's see. The modern feminist movement is generally considered to have started in 1848 with the Seneca Falls Convention in New York. So they had transgender people in mind back in 1848? Is that what you're telling me? Because I don't think that's historically correct. I could be wrong. What do I know? Can you imagine though? Seriously? They put this statement out during Lesbian Visibility Week. So in Lesbian Visibility Week, you're telling lesbians how to be lesbians. Makes perfect sense. Tracks. A battle over basic rights. Barney Frank, the first openly gay member of Congress, has been in the fight for a long time. In 2007, he sponsored the End Discrimination Now Act, which would have ended workplace discrimination based on sexual orientation. He had enough Republican votes to pass it, but transgender activists excoriated him for not including gender identity as well. Frank added it to the bill, dooming it to failure. It would be another 13 years before both classes would win protection. Talk about slowing down a movement, huh? Talk about slowing down a movement. There's some other stuff that this is going to go with later. I'm glad I'm reading this right now. Certain disagreements within the movement are substantive, Frank concealed in an interview. A lot of gay people don't buy into the notion that there is no such thing as biological gender or support the insistence that male to female transgender people should be granted entry into women's only spaces without clothing, Frank said. Despite recent polls showing waning support for gay marriage, Frank said he believes the real threat right now is toward transgender people. Most gay people, he said, support their basic rights, including official documents that reflect a person's gender identity and access to gender reassignment treatments for minors. No, we don't. What are you talking about? And access to gender reassignment treatments for minors? No, that's not. Most gay people are supportive of that. The other parts, and that's where the trans community screws itself, because they try to bundle it all together and be like, you either agree with all of this or you agree with none of this. And if you put our backs against the wall that way, we say we agree with none of it. Because in case you haven't heard me say it before, a lot of us gay people thought that we were trans when we were younger because we had no language for what we were, and we also didn't know that it was possible if we grew up in certain regions. Like me, I grew up in rural Arizona, and so I didn't know that being gay was even a thing, and I've gotten into it before. But long story short, in my head, I thought I was a girl. I truly did believe that. I never expressed it to anybody because back in those days, you wouldn't tell anybody that kind of thing. You would just one day show up a woman and let them deal with it. Just, but it's true. That was my plan. I was going to go away and become a woman one day. But then when I realized that gay was an option, and I laugh, but I truly, I cannot drive that home enough for people. I truly, in my mind, when I was younger, thought that I was a girl. That's the way I would picture myself. I even knew what kind of purse I wanted to wear when I was going to be an actual woman, because I knew fat girls and they all had these little purses. And I didn't want to be a fat girl, but I wanted a fat girl purse. But the irony is, when I grew up and I'm a man, I have a purse now, and my purse is nothing like the purse I would have had as a woman. Turns out I really did detransition. Let me get it together. I better stop, but this is going to take forever because I keep laughing. But even what Frank refers to as basic rights are fiercely disputed. Yep, I just disputed them. Every gay and lesbian person interviewed agreed that transgender people should be free from discrimination and harassment in housing and employment, as decided by the Supreme Court in the 2020 case Bostock versus Clayton County, which extended the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to sexual orientation and gender identity. But when it comes to altering the sex indicated on a birth certificate or passport, which 66% of Americans oppose, many raised objections. You can't undo the fact of how you were born or that you're male or female, said Arian Granger, 36, an investor in San Francisco and a secretary for the LGBT Alliance USA, a volunteer organization founded in 2020. It would be much harder to enforce single-sex spaces for women if you have no documentation to back it up, Garinger said. One viable alternative to changing a person's birth sex on official documents, she suggested, would be an additional gender identity category. For transgender people, it's not necessarily so simple. Brianna Wu, a 48-year-old Democratic operative, says the Trump administration's efforts to eliminate gender identity on passports would be a nightmare for people like her who have undergone gender reassignment surgery. The deal was that if I did that, I got to be legally female, she said. Trump rolling that back has been a horrific attack on not just my civil rights, but also my dignity. You know, there's times that I agree with Brianna Wu, and then there's times that I really don't. And Brianna Wu is one of these trans people, I'll put a picture of her up, that swears she is just the most feminine thing in the world. And I really don't think Brianna Wu passes. I can see how a woman would look at Brianna Wu and be like, yeah, that doesn't belong in my locker room. So she may feel like that's where she belongs, but it doesn't necessarily mean you do, doll. For many gay people, the LGBTQ plus movement's overwhelming support for pediatric gender transition is their biggest point of difference. They consider this a kind of conversion therapy akin to conservatives' efforts to treat gay youth by suppressing their sexual desires and becoming straight. Research shows the majority of kids seeking gender transition report same-sex attraction. In state houses from Georgia to California, some of the most vocal opponents to what proponents call gender-affirming care for minors are gay and lesbian adults. They fear that America is inadvertently following the homophobic biases of countries like Iran, where homosexuality is illegal and gay people are forced to choose between prison or gender transition. Out of the closet. Navleen Naji, a 35-year-old artist who blogs about race, gender, and creativity under the name Navleen. I'm sure this person's a miserable person. Just to begin with, when that's what you blog about, I know you're going to be a miserable person. I got proven wrong in the next sentence. Has lost friends and relationships as a result of her outspoken rejection of gender ideology and her insistence on lesbian sex-based rights. She also resents some LGBTQ plus advocates' comparison of transgender oppression to racial oppression, which she sees as illogical. Okay, I take it back. I love Navleen already because I keep saying that. Stop comparing sexual orientation and gender identity to race. It's completely different. It's not the same. Stop yourselves. It's a losing strategy. Nobody's going for it. Quote, I have walked through fire and I continue to walk through fire in my personal life with friends saying I can't hang out with you anymore because you said X, Y, Z, or that they're afraid to be seen in my presence, Naji told me. In 2023, she lost the Instagram account she used as her professional platform after expressing support for Black lesbian detransitioners, formerly trans people who revert to their birth sex identity. Naji repeatedly tried to have her account restored to no avail. A spokesperson for Meta declined to comment, but pointed out that Meta's hate speech policy has since evolved. Well, then give her account back. Even if it's now, give her account back. In January, the company lifted previous restrictions on topics that are part of mainstream discourse. For LGBT dissenters, many of whom grew up closeted and relied on acceptance among their peers, being excoriated by their gay and lesbian communities is particularly painful. It runs against the outspoken activism that is often core to the identity. Many compared the way their own community treats them to being put back in the closet again. And I'll talk about this just really quick. I have a friend who's conservative that's gay, and he's much younger than I am. Not much younger, but much younger than I am. And he's dealing with that because he's still young enough that he was used to having that community, and then he came out as conservative, and now he doesn't really have a home anymore, like as far as gay goes. And so that is something that a lot of people deal with. I am old enough that I don't care about other people like that. I don't need a social circle. So I don't really personally so much, or that doesn't so much resonate with me at this point in my life. But I understand how for some people that can be a real thing. So that's something that does need to be addressed. I'm glad they're bringing it up. Two prominent organizations that advocate for trans rights, Lambda Legal and the Trevor Project, did not respond to requests for interviews. That's because they can't even handle the speech. A lot of people can't even handle the discussion. That's what I should say, not the speech, but the discussion. A lot of the LGBT activists, because they'll come to a dead end, because their positions are typically illogical and there's no way to combat actual logic when you're coming from an illogical place. And that's why they shy away from talking to anything that challenges them, especially from within their community, because you can't say that we as gay people are homophobic. You can't say that a lot of us are transphobic. So when you take that away from them, they have absolutely no argument at all. There's no point for them to debate, because it's like, okay, I'm not that. Okay, I'm not that either. So where are we? Because we're talking about this in a logical way, and you can get away with being illogical with straight people because you can always fall back on you're homophobic, you're transphobic, you don't know my community. Yes, I do know your community. I'm from your community. I was your community before you became a part of the community in a lot of cases. Because a lot of the people that I'm going to debate, I guarantee you, or that I should say would try to debate me, which I don't really think a lot would, because they just know I'm used to public speaking too. So you wouldn't have that on. But I really do know my gay history. And so you're not going to be able to come at me in an illogical way and have it wash, because I'll just keep zinging you with, okay, that's not true. That's not even our history. But like I said, with straight people, they can always weaponize their identity and be like, well, you're straight, so you wouldn't know. You're just hate. You would never get it. But yeah, so they turned it down. Several gay people interviewed expressed hope that despite, or perhaps in response to, government headwinds, institutional intransigence, and political polarization, speaking out may be getting easier. Recent data also suggests that after a decade of dramatic increases, fewer young people are identifying as trans or non-binary. Earlier this month, a widely circulated post on the Gender Crossroads Substack, a plea to my fellow trans people, declared the honeymoon phase for trans acceptance to be over. It read in part of me can't help feeling that we as a community have brought some of this on ourselves by refusing to talk with people who hold different beliefs from our own. The no debate policy so common among trans activist circles, and by insisting that anyone who might have questions about the recent proliferation of gender identities is a transphobe. To say this one narrative is the true narrative and anybody that says anything else is a bigot is not a very helpful strategy. The post author, Stefan, a 46-year-old trans man who transitioned in his 20s, said in an interview, it doesn't really show much empathy for other people. And then that's the end of the article. Yeah, and so that's it. And so it seems like a fair amount of, I want to say, level-headed trans people, or newly coming around to being level-headed trans people, are really starting to get it. And I can see how they would be coming to this awakening, even though it's a little late, but better late than never. And it's never too late. It's never too late to correct course. It's never too late to start behaving like regular people and understanding that not everybody is just going to submit to you because you identify a particular way, which is a lot of what the trans community has been relying on, is just emotionally blackmailing people and also weaponizing their gender identity, and the fact that people were feeling bad for them for a while there. And they really got comfortable in that I can just abuse people. So that's why they speak to women the way they speak to them. That's why they speak to gay men the way they speak to them. That's why they're trying to turn everything trans and queer and whatever else. And now people are just fighting back. And that's not only straight people, but that's gay people as well. And so it's really going to get to a point where they can either correct it, or it's going to hurt the entire trans community. And they're going to find themselves by themselves. And when this article says that the gays are 90% of what's considered the LGBTQ plus community, now keep in mind that we are, as a whole, estimated to be about 10% of the population. So if you're now 10% of 10%, you're nothing. And so stop trying to act like gays and lesbians owe you everything, and that you're the ones that move everything, when you're 10% of 10%. Let's be honest, even as a full community, we're not moving a lot. Well, product. But even corporations have stopped catering to us, which should tell you something, because we're the original dink. Dual income, no kids, which is a very desirable market. So you guys can let me know what you think, but that's where I'm at on it. Leave a comment down below. Click the video on your screen. Other than that, as always, thank you for watching. This has been Thai Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.